Thank you all very kindly for having me here with each and every one of you this afternoon. I was quite honored to receive a phone call from Nancy Glazier, the director of the Augusta Museum of History, to ask me would I speak under the terms of education and my daughter's education. The significance of my daughter's education is described through my own history. I'm a young woman, middle-aged today, that grew up in Oconee County with both my parents. Bootstrappers, public school in Oconee County school system, in which they believe in make your way because the world isn't giving you anything. And to be a good person, your name is your brand in society. Fast forward, met this young man at Georgia Southern University named Garnett Johnson. We went to school together. We enjoyed one another's company, married. I've been in Augusta, Georgia for about 30 years now. The background is in tourism. Well, I had the luxury and the honor and the pleasure of meeting all kind of people from all walks of life. It doesn't matter. I carried the motto that my grandfather Samuel Seals had, never met a stranger a day in her life or his life at that time. So here we are today, not knowing what life is going to bring you and where you're going to go in life, but I'm standing here before you today as a daughter, a sister, a wife, and a mother. Education, my daughter's education. Let's start with the oldest. First of all, I have two daughters, Caitlin Camille Johnson, and Lauren Ashton Johnson. Caitlin is the young lady in the basketball uniform, and Lauren is my little girl in the stripe. My girls are 5 years apart. Westminster Schools of Augusta is the school that we chose. I had no idea, not being a native from Augusta, what the schools looked like or the curriculum. But I do know what I wanted in my girls' education was religion. So with that being said, I went to a few of the public schools and I went to a few of the private schools. And my daughter, the oldest, of course, was tested to see if she could get in. And the school that she was able to get in was Westminster Schools of Augusta. I did also look at EDS, but they didn't have the teacher shortage and things of that nature, so it didn't pan out. So Caitlin starts at 4 years old at Westminster in pre-K. Now, the first week of Caitlin being in school is in August. I am 9 months pregnant with Lauren. So I proceed to tell the pre-K teacher that I want to get a good introduction to who the school is, who her teachers are, because next week I'm going to go have my second child, which is Lauren. I chose Westminster Schools of Augusta, again, because of religion in the school, and you can't do anything without Christ. A critical and rigorous curriculum academically. It didn't bother me that they were going to be the minority, not the majority. That is an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, but I believe in doing what's right and getting out of your own way for the benefit of the future and those you are raising in the future. So Caitlin starts school as a 4-year-old in pre-K. And just a little bit of the history, she's the only minority in her class till 8th grade. The only minority in her class till 8th grade, from pre-K to 8th grade. And then another young man came into the school system. It was a little different for Lauren. There were maybe 3 or 4 other kids that were minorities, not the majority, in her class. But for Caitlin, I knew how to navigate what that looks like because she was not the chatty Cathy. She wasn't the one who was going to be the loudest or the most heard. She was a quiet child. I wouldn't necessarily say shy today. I used to call it shy, but she wasn't shy. She was just quiet and focused, but was smart because she would record everything and can remember everything. So because of that, you have field trips. And because I didn't want her to be that child in the background, every Friday was a folder in which they would take home for the weekend. So me being the mom that I am, I said, how can I help my child not get lost in the shuffle? Photography, pictures, field trips. Being strategic, I knew not every mom or father could make the field trips. But if somebody took pictures and put it in the Friday folder, therefore everybody got a piece of what that looked like without being there, from the quiet child in the classroom. So the quiet child in the classroom no longer became the quiet child before long, because the moms and the children would say ethically, because they were taught that at the school, thank you. We appreciate having these memories. So we have Lauren now. Lauren is the opposite of Caitlin. She's the talker. She's the matter of fact, the principle of it. Now, with her group of kids that she went to school with, they came from all over the CSRA, but not so much with Caitlin. Caitlin, most of the kids she started with, the oldest, were Augustans. So people started learning the school and what it stood for, and it was a little different for Lauren. Some kids would challenge you and challenge the parents. And therefore, I walked a thin line on what does that look like for my two daughters. I always told them to carry themselves with dignity and honor. You can't do anything without the Lord first, but you're not going to be a pushover for anyone either. Just like you can be wrong, your peers can be wrong, and your teachers can be wrong. See, we are Baptists and the school is Presbyterian. That didn't bother us as parents, my husband and I. I believe diversity is necessary to make it in any part of this world and society. So we took two little Baptist girls and put them in a Presbyterian school system in which they did very well. Now, there were some times in the Bible class that the Bible teacher couldn't quite understand the level of scripture and their interpretation. But surely, by the time my quiet child received it and brought it home, but my child that's not so quiet, she let them know there in the classroom, there's more than one way to decipher what was said in the Bible. And she would let it be heard. So Lauren was that child right here in the stripes that would identify on the spot, while Caitlin internalized it, brought it home, analyzed it, and discussed it with me to get the answer. Moving on from elementary school, you meet all kind of people and all kind of field trips and experiences that you have. Lauren's first grade teacher here is with her. And then she's also a child that took karate. I never wanted my two children to copy the other. Because you have an older sibling, you don't have to do what he or she has done. Caitlin was a cheerleader and played basketball. Lauren was the tag-along, but 5 years later. However, she liked to have a sport, and I knew that she had a little fight in her. So I said, let's do karate. And she excelled in karate, to the point she became a black belt in karate. So that's what she is. So I had one child that would kick and one child that would cheer in that sense. Middle school. Middle school is a critical time for any child that you're raising today, parent, grandparent, or whomever. And then you start getting these adolescent ways. But in middle school is when things became more identifiable with my girls. In elementary school, lower school, in that case, they didn't see color. You were just a playmate and a child to play with. But at times as kids get older, they start developing ways and habits, and things tend to change. Not necessarily in a bad way, but things are identified that they didn't identify with in elementary school. So I talked to my girls and navigated to them about what that looked like. And I said, it's okay if a person's not your friend this year or today, go play alone because you have recess. No one likes to be ignored. Ignore them, and I guarantee tomorrow you can't get rid of them. So we broke what that looked like through experience, but it wasn't always an easy task as a mom of two African American little girls in an environment where they're the majority, the minority, not the majority. Political season was difficult at times because you don't know how people stand and they don't know how you stand, but assumptions are always made. But I kept that close to the vest and navigated that with my girls and said, less is more. If it's something you don't understand, bring it to your mama and your daddy, and we will help you figure it out. So in the midst of working 24 years in tourism and meeting all kind of people in the world, I'm doing this balancing act of education with my girls. And often was asked, Mrs. Johnson, would you consider serving on the school board? Now, you would think someone would jump and say, yes, I would do that. I did not. I had several questions for the head of school, to the point the head of school says to me, well, Mrs. Johnson, I've never been questioned or interviewed before somebody decides they want to take a position on the board or not. I said, well, this is a heavy, heartfelt task that you're asking, and shame on those who don't question the responsibility of being a person that serves. So I grew up serving. In fact, serving on the board with the kids at the school, fought for all children. It doesn't matter. Right is right, wrong is wrong. But the moral of the story is, I thought it was a 4-year term that ended up being 6 years. They just wouldn't let me go. High school. High school was a time where everything you knuckle down and it's real serious because you don't know where you're going, and it precedes you, your grades, into the next level of college. The girls continue to play sports and be active. Lauren wasn't so much of the athletic type at the school, but she academically would excel. So I said, wherever your strength is, this is what we're going to capitalize on. Caitlin was an average academic school child and played sports. Could have pushed a little harder and tried. I stayed on top of it. But Lauren, she was that overachiever. It wasn't good enough. So I had one I pushed a little and one I had to pull back a little. However, they end up complementing each other and what they had to do. School itself is hard for all children, but it all begins at home and with parenting. You have to train a child in which the way he or she should go. You have to do these things, because if you do not do these things, you will fail the children once they leave your roof and get out here in society. So in high school, I changed too, because I had to look at what if. The what if was, if something happened to me today, could my girls function and function well? In order to know that, I had to make sure that they were excelling. I never taught them that they couldn't fail. Failure is an option. I disagree with people who say failure is not an option. Well, if you don't fail in something in life, how do you know how to fight back to pull yourself up and see how successful you can be in the end of victorious glory of the outcome? You got to fail and fight to succeed and make a difference. You have to in life. So academically, Lauren did well on her own accord because she pushed herself. That's the head of school, Dr. Bauer there. He often talked about her and her manners. Manners matter. It matters. When people meet you, they see you. A first impression is a lasting impression. And it was important for my girls to have a good first impression. Not every day was easy at school. Not every teacher was easy to work with. There were times I had to have a candid conversation with a couple of teachers. I've been introduced to a teacher as in the elementary school level. My child had an off day. It wasn't in character. I said, leave my child alone. You have an off day. You don't always be in character. So who are you to judge? Not a lot, but there are times it was difficult and I had to address certain issues. And we moved on. Caitlin graduates from Westminster and she attends Spelman College. Spelman is in Atlanta, Georgia, in which she graduated the top 5% of Spelman, economics major. Caitlin went to Spelman, transitioned from Westminster. That is two totally different looks. I was asked by a head of school at the time, what would that culturally look like for her? I said, she'll be fine. Because from the time they were little girls to where they are today, diversity was the key. You have to do that so they can navigate with all walks of life and with people. So Caitlin goes to Spelman and see a lot of other girls that look like her, but with similar backgrounds. Because a lot of the kids at Spelman also came from a private school. She does well, so well that her English professor wanted to know where did she go to school, because this child could write 3 essays in a week and pass all with A's. That's the academic rigor. She finishes that and take a senior year and go on to New York to do an internship with JP Morgan. Stocks and bond investment banking, a summer. This is where diversity comes in as well. Because we taught the girls, go out there, the sky is big, and get a piece of the pie. I didn't teach them to be afraid. Of course, I was nervous about pushing my child out. Atlanta, downtown Fulton County. And then we go on to New York, where you have no relative, nobody. And you're navigating a big city, staying at NYU, taking the train to Wall Street. Once you're there, you're navigating investment bankers, gurus, eat, sleep, breathe, stock, and bonds. And you are 19, 20 years old. She choked. The second day, I talked to her and I said, I'm going to let you cry. And then we're going to figure this out. I said, this is going to pave your future. I said, look at the people you are entwined with. Guess what? What, mama? The only difference between you and them, they've been here longer. That's the only difference. They're not necessarily smarter. They've been here longer and they've had more experience. But with you being that quiet child, that focused child, the one that's paying attention and record it all, by doing those same things you did as a 4-year-old through high school, use that same tool of thumb at JP Morgan. After that, she went flying through that, figured out stocks and bonds and investment banking, asking the Lord to guide her and help her figure it out. Asked for a job. She was offered a job. My daughter said, no, thank you. Her father said, what? She said, no, Daddy. She said, because I know right here and now, you have no rest, no peace. It's 8 in the morning to 2 in the morning. She was taking an Uber back to NYU at 2 in the morning and had to be back at 8 in the morning. 5 o'clock was lunchtime. You know how people run out of here at 5 o'clock to go home? That was lunchtime in investment banking world. So she said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is part of my internship for my senior year. I guarantee I will find a career before I graduate college. So what I'm saying to you is the stepping stone of my background pouring into them, bootstraps, staying focused, God in it, making it happen, it's carried my girls throughout their life mixing it up, doing what's uncomfortable. Doing what's uncomfortable is exactly what moves the needle in life today, yesteryear, anytime. You have to push them and push yourself to do what's uncomfortable. That's how you grow. That's how they grow. So she comes back, she's in her senior year, she does her resume, and she gets a job with Norfolk Southern. They interviewed her. Again, this is not the chatty Cathy child. This is the quiet strategic child. They were blown away by her academics and her resume. The only thing, and she received the job, that they said to my daughter Caitlin, you are the nicest collector we've ever had. We need for you to be a little bit more aggressive. She said, Mama, I just don't want to be mean to people and not have a reason to be mean. I said, you're not being mean. I said, you got a goal. I said, your goal is to quit renting and start owning. So give them what they want so you can start owning a place instead of renting a place. All of this is going on in Lawrence in high school. Lawrence in high school, and she's figuring out her world. So she played volleyball, wasn't the best. She tried basketball, wasn't the best. But academically, I said, Lauren, get in all the scholar classes you can. Take all the APs you can. That's where you succeed. She tried basketball and she never played the last 2 minutes. She was furious at the coach. And I had words with the coach too, because mamas don't like kids sitting on the bench. However, she turned at the end of the year, because if my girls started something, they were required to finish it. We don't quit in the middle of nothing. You start it, you finish it. So at the end of the basketball season for Lauren, she writes a resignation letter to the basketball coach. I didn't tell her to do that, but I always talk business to the girls. So, you get hired this way and then you're going to leave. You resign this way. And so she wrote a resignation letter and told him why she was resigning to work on her academics and think that would be better for her and her future goals. So in doing so, she also graduated top of her class at Westminster Schools of Augusta. And her father was the commencement speaker, which was rare to have a child of any race have their father up there to discuss academic success and it be your dad. Lauren applies to a number of schools and she gets accepted to the University of Georgia. I said, now, Lauren, that's a big school coming from where you are. She said, yes, Mama, but like you and Daddy taught us, I don't care if it's 5,000 people, we're not going to be a number, they're going to know me. I said, well, you got a point. Even in church, we're members of Good Shepherd Baptist Church on Olive Road. It's where we go under the leadership of Clarence Moore, Reverend Clarence Moore. I said, Lauren, okay. So she tests, she scores, she gets in. She gets in on a scholarship. That child saved me money. Okay? She gets in on a scholarship. You have to have 30 credits in order to be a sophomore at the University of Georgia. She went in with 29. I said, child, had I known, I would have pushed for that other one. So by January, she was a sophomore. The point I'm making now is life brings a lot of challenges and trials and tribulations. But we're firm believers, you can't do anything without the Lord being in it first. And the guidance, whether it be your parents, your grandparents, aunt, uncle, somebody that cares for a child. Don't see color in a child. See where a child can go. Most kids beg for attention and guidance. And if you say that's a bad child, I say they're not. They just need direction. My girls have done a lot of amazing things through the guidance of my husband and I, because I refuse to let them fail. You can fall, you cannot do well, but it's how you fight to get back in the game. These girls today, Caitlin's in the pink, the oldest, Lauren in the green, the youngest, are very close. They're 5 years apart. They only have each other, and I taught them to love one another. Their father and I do uncomfortable things every day of our life, and that for me was unique. But he has also instilled into them, there's nothing you cannot do if you set your mind to it with God and grace. Your name is your brand. Your life is already written out. We're just going through the month, which is the chapter. The date is the page of the book of whoever your name is. Thank you. How do we become mama bears? First of all, know your child. You name that child. You live with that child. You know that child's strengths and weaknesses. Be involved with the company that child keeps. Let your children know they can share with you anything. I told my girls nothing was off limits. Ask me and your father anything. Stay close to them. Read the bedtime story. Interact with them. A child wants to please you, and they look at you as their hero. You're the Wonder Woman and the Superman. You determine how that child navigates, because they will fall back to you for advice from the time they start pre-K to the time they graduate. You are that rock. So when they leave your nest, you can say, job well done. They may act like they don't hear you, but when they're away from you, everything you poured into your children will come back to surface. Even though they're little, may not even be walking, they're paying attention. They're listening, looking, and learning. They mimic you. Remember that. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that and respect what you said to me. My parents are 74-year-old people, and they grew up during segregation. My father, Oconee County, and my mother, Athens, Clarke County. So think about that. Growing up during segregation, they marry, have children, grow up in Oconee County, which where there was not a lot of minorities in Oconee County. A lot of farm, country people, just suburban atmosphere. But my parents grew up with the rule of thumb, people are people. You treat them the way you want to be treated. Even though someone's mean to you, it doesn't have to be an eye for an eye. So they poured into us how to behave, how to act. Your name is your brand. And so watching them and loving each other and raising my sister and I, you learn from your parents and you find yourself repeating a lot of what they have done. And then in your own relationship, and you become a parent, you kind of pick and choose what you want out of it and create your own. But it was important for me and my husband having daughters. I don't have sons. Take pride in who you are. Pour in love. Love yourself. See, a lot of times today, kids don't love themselves. They don't even know who they are. But you have to pour that into them, that you are somebody. You are smart. And challenge yourself to sit beside the ones you think is smart, and you'll learn they're not as smart as you think they are. If you tell a child every day that they are not going to be worth nothing, they will believe it. But if you tell a child every day, like I did in Caroline, kiss your brain, you're smart. Now get out the car and go get it. And that backpack was bigger than them. And they just a walking and it's a flapping. But they're going to class because my mama said. You'd be surprised how much weight my mama, my daddy, said that the teacher hear every day. You're the rock. You're the hero. You're the foundation. I just pretty much picked from what my parents and poured into myself and my sister and kind of correlate that into what I wanted my girls to be like. I told them every day isn't easy. Every day is not going to be a bed of roses, but it's what you make of it. And you got to know how to navigate with all kind of people, all walks of life. Don't turn your nose up on anybody, because that very one you turn your nose up at, they may be the very one you have to save, or they save you one day. Life brings about peculiar situations, and you never know what situation you're going to be in. I don't say you got to like everybody, because there's some people on this earth I don't like. And that's a fact. There are chemistries out here in this world you're just not going to mix with. But don't you love knowing who that is and how far you need to take it? But you stay focused. And as my father would say, it's only temporary. Troubles don't last always. Tough people do.
I wish all parents could be like you.
I had what you call brute strap parents who didn't spare the rod.
Yeah.
Um, it all goes back to the Bible. It's all written, y'all. It's all written in the Bible and which way we should go. You spare the rod, you spoil the child. And it starts under the roof and where they live and how you teach and guide them. Yes, it's laxed a whole lot today. But you see what we're dealing with in society a lot of times today? But a child isn't totally lost. It's like Play-Doh. You catch them at a certain age and you can still mold them and shape them into the way they need to go. They actually, when they cut up, I call it cut up, lack of other words, they're screaming, help me, guide me, put me on that Norfolk Southern Railroad track so I can go straight. That's all that is. It's very simple. What we got to do, people complicate it. I look at this young man right here with this red t-shirt. If I talk to him long enough, and all of you, I can convince him that that shirt is purple. It's the power of influence and the mind on how one navigates. If you teach that little mind that it's strong and they can do it and know right from wrong, then they're going to succeed. But if you don't teach that little one nothing, and I know his shirt is red, and I tell you that shirt is purple, they're going to buckle down and say, well, you're right, it's purple. It's the influence of the power of the teacher that starts at home. There you go. My husband and I work hard for everything we've ever had. Nobody's giving us anything. You got to get out there and work, be a workhorse to appreciate it. I did 40 plus hours a week in tourism, 24 years of that. Being a wife and a mother, 6 years on a school board. Board means you didn't get home to 10:30 at night. Sports, and you at these academic sports and athletic sports events. You know what it boils down to? It's very simple. You gotta want to. You got to want to be involved and be in that child's life. If not you, then find someone that you trust that will pick up the slack where you won't do it or can't do it or won't find the time to do it. But let me tell you what a child's going to remember. Just like a sponge, a child's going to remember everything about who was good to them and who wasn't good to them, who they learned from, and who didn't have time for them. Life is a cycle. If you don't make time now, when it's your turn and you need their time, they're not going to make time for you either. You got to pour it in them. You got to be involved. You got to plant it. Plant the seed in which a child should go, and you will reap the rewards of what that looks like. If something happens to me today, I know in my heart that my girls could function. They could make it because we planted the seed in which they should go. It ain't going to be easy all the time, not even half the time. But the outcome of navigating what's difficult is such a high within itself. We only know to do what's difficult because it's bigger than us. We taught them, give back, help people, serve. You have to do that. If you only interact with people that look like you, that talk like you, that act like you, well, how are you going to function when you're out here at the airport and you got to go do an internship or go to this new job out there in Alaska? And you don't know anybody except for the ones that look like you, talk like you, act like you. Then you, in my opinion, did a disjustice in the upbringing of what that looks like for the future. I don't want a 30 or 40-year-old living with me. So teach them and guide them so they can get their own. You done your job. Yes, ma'am.
Do either of your daughters want to go into politics?
No, ma'am. That's a good question. Actually, I don't even know how that even came about in the universe. Because that was not guided.
So that wasn't his plan?
No, that was not business people. No. But the love of this community and want to make a difference for the right is why we make the huge sacrifice and put ourselves out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give her one more round of applause. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.